Some places are hard to reach, but others are almost impossible to leave. Towns where the ocean becomes a prison. Villages where the air itself works against you. Communities trapped at the bottom of canyons. Arctic settlements where predators can walk straight into the street. And islands so remote that escape depends on weather, boats, luck, and time. These are not places where you can simply pack a bag and drive away. If you get sick here, you wait. If the weather turns, you wait. If the only boat does not come, you wait. Because in these places, geography is not just scenery. It is the wall around your life, which raises one obvious question. Would you stay here and wait until you see the final location on our journey? Because it may be the strangest isolated settlement on Earth. A place where people can stand outside their homes, look across the water, and literally see tomorrow. To understand what true isolation feels like, you have to start in the middle of the ocean. Welcome to Tristan da Cunha. At first, it looks almost peaceful. A green volcanic island rising out of the South Atlantic. Small homes, steep cliffs, waves crashing against black rock. But zoom out on a map and the illusion disappears. There is nothing around it. No neighboring city, no nearby airport, no emergency road, just thousands of miles of cold, violent ocean. Tristan da Cunha is often described as the most remote inhabited archipelago on Earth, and the word remote does not really explain it. There is no airport, there is no landing strip. You cannot fly here. The only way in is by boat, usually from South Africa, a journey that can take around 6 days, across some of the roughest water on the planet, and the only way out is the same way. Now imagine that this is not a holiday, this is your life. Fewer than 300 people live here, clinging to the edge of a volcanic island in the middle of nowhere. For outsiders it sounds beautiful, quiet, simple, untouched, until something goes wrong. Imagine you fall and break your leg. Imagine a serious infection. Imagine your appendix bursts. Imagine a child needs urgent hospital care. In most places, you call an ambulance. Here, the ocean answers first. There is no quick helicopter rescue from a nearby city. There is no motorway to a hospital. There is no airport waiting behind the village. The nearest major medical help is days away, and that is only if the weather allows a ship to move. If the sea is too rough, the harbor becomes dangerous. If the harbor is closed, you do not leave. Suddenly, the beautiful ocean around the island becomes something else. A border, a barrier, a trap. Would you raise your family in a place where an emergency is not measured in minutes but in days? Where the weather can decide whether help reaches you? Where leaving home means crossing an ocean? For the people of Tristan da Cunha, the sea is everything. It feeds them, it protects them, it isolates them, and when something goes wrong, it becomes the wall they cannot climb. But water is only one way geography locks people in. Sometimes the trap is not around you, it is above you. High in the Andes Mountains, there is a settlement where simply breathing can feel like a battle. Welcome to Rinconada, Peru. At nearly 17,000 feet above sea level, this is one of the highest permanent settlements on Earth. It sits high in the mountains, close to glaciers where the air is thin. The cold is brutal, and the human body is never truly comfortable. At this altitude, oxygen drops dramatically. The air has roughly half the oxygen your body expects. Walking uphill can feel like drowning. Sleeping can feel like suffocating. Even ordinary movement becomes work. Now, imagine trying to live here. Not climb here, not visit here. Live here. There is no proper comfort waiting behind the mountain views. La Rinconada is not a polished alpine town. It grew around informal and often illegal gold mining. The streets are rough. The cold cuts through everything. Infrastructure is limited. Running water and sewage systems are major problems. and everywhere there is the shadow of the mine. People come here for one reason: gold. Not scenery, not peace, not adventure. Gold. For many, La Rinconada is not a dream destination. It is a last chance. A place where people climb into the freezing clouds because poverty on the ground has already trapped them. Miners work in dangerous tunnels under the glacier. The work is exhausting. The conditions are harsh, and mercury used in gold extraction can poison the water, the ground, and the people who depend on both. This is a different kind of isolation. Tristan da Cunha traps you with distance. La Rinconada traps you with desperation, because leaving is not always simple. If the only work you can find is here, then the mountain becomes more than a mountain. It becomes a cage. You can walk away from the cold. But can you walk away from the only chance to feed your family? Would you stay in a place where every breath feels harder than it should, where the air is thin, the streets are frozen, and the thing keeping people alive is also slowly destroying them? La Rinconada sits high enough to touch the sky, but for many people there, it is not freedom. It is survival at altitude, and from a town trapped in the clouds, we move to a community trapped beneath the earth itself. Welcome to Coober Pedy, Australia. From above, it looks almost empty. Red dirt, dusty roads, scattered machinery, endless desert. It looks less like a town and more like the surface of another planet, but that is because much of Coober Pedy is hidden. People here do not just live on the land, they live inside it. In the Australian outback, the heat can become unbearable. Summer temperatures can climb so high that the surface feels hostile. The sun does not just warm the ground, it attacks it. Stand outside too long, and the landscape feels like it is trying to cook you alive. So the people of Coober Pedy did something extreme. They dug down. Homes were carved into the rock. Churches were built underground. Hotels were built underground. Entire lives moved beneath the surface. These underground homes are called dugouts, and inside them, the temperature stays far more stable than the desert above. Cooler, quieter, protected from the burning sun. At first, it sounds clever, maybe even comfortable, until you think about what it really means. The environment above you is so hostile that the safest place to sleep is inside the earth. You wake up underground. You walk through rooms with no normal windows. You step outside and the heat hits like an open oven. The sky, which should feel like freedom, becomes the thing you hide from. Would you stay in a town where the weather forces you underground, where survival means building your home like a bunker, where the landscape is so extreme that ordinary houses make no sense? Coober Pedy proves something strange about humans. We do not always leave impossible places. Sometimes we adapt so hard that the impossible place becomes normal, but Coober Pedy still has roads. You can leave, you can drive into the desert and eventually reach somewhere else. Our next location is different, because here, the road simply disappears. Welcome to Supai, Arizona. Supai is one of the most remote communities in the lower 48 states of America, and it sits at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. There are no normal roads into the village. You cannot just drive there. You cannot pull up in a car. To reach Supai, you hike miles down a steep canyon trail, or you ride a mule, or if conditions allow, you take a helicopter. Even the mail has famously been delivered by mule. That is how cut off this place is. For the Havasupai people, this land is sacred. The waterfalls are stunning. The canyon walls are enormous. The blue-green water looks unreal, but beauty can hide danger, because Supai sits inside a giant natural funnel. When heavy rain falls in the desert above, water can tear through the canyon with terrifying speed. Flash floods do not always give you time. Dry ground can become violent water. Quiet trails can become escape routes. The walls around you, which make the place beautiful, also make it dangerous. Because when water comes down a canyon, it does not politely spread out. It charges through, and when you are at the bottom, there is only one direction that feels safe: up. Imagine living in a place where your escape route is not a road, it is a climb. Imagine knowing that the same canyon that protects your home can also trap it. Would you stay at the bottom of a bowl, where the walls around you are taller than buildings, where the only way out takes strength, time, and perfect conditions? Supai is not isolated because it is far out at sea. It is isolated because the earth has folded around it. A village, hidden in one of the most famous landscapes on the planet. Seen by millions, reached by very few. But in Greenland, isolation becomes even colder, because there, the wall is not rock, it is ice. Welcome to Ittoqqortoormiit. This is one of the most isolated settlements on Earth's surface. A small town on the eastern coast of Greenland, surrounded by mountains, sea ice, and Arctic silence. For much of the year, the ocean around it freezes. Ships cannot simply come and go whenever they want. Flights depend heavily on weather, and when winter settles in, the town can feel completely sealed off from the rest of humanity. Only a few hundred people live here, and life is shaped by forces most of us never have to think about. Darkness, cold, distance, ice, and polar bears. In many towns, stepping outside at night means looking for traffic. Here, it can mean looking for the world's largest land predator. Polar bears can approach settlements in Arctic regions, and that changes the way a place feels. The darkness is not just dark, it is something you scan. The empty street is not just empty, it is something you check. The silence is not peaceful, it can be a warning. In places like this, people may carry rifles when traveling outside settlement areas, because the Arctic is not a theme park, it is bear country. Now, add the isolation. Supplies do not arrive like they do in a normal town. You cannot just order something and expect it tomorrow. The seasons control what comes in. Weather controls who gets out. If something runs out at the wrong time, you wait. If someone needs to travel urgently, the sky decides. Would you stay in a place where winter can cut you off for months, where the sun disappears for long stretches, where the sea freezes, supplies are limited, and stepping outside means remembering that humans are not always at the top of the food chain? Ittoqqortoormiit is not just remote. It is humbling. It reminds you that modern life is fragile, that roads, shops, hospitals, deliveries, and easy travel are not guaranteed. They are luxuries, and the Arctic can take them away. But there is another Arctic settlement, where isolation comes with a different kind of strangeness. A place where humans live at the edge of what feels possible. Welcome to Longyearbyen, Svalbard. This is one of the world's northernmost towns, a settlement deep in the Arctic, far above mainland Europe, surrounded by glaciers, mountains, and polar night. For part of the year, the sun does not rise. Not late, not briefly, not weekly. It does not rise at all. Day after day, the town sits under darkness. And when the sun does return, it goes to the other extreme. Endless daylight. A place where the clock says night, but the sky refuses to agree. Longyearbyen looks almost unreal. Rows of colorful buildings, snowmobiles, frozen valleys, mountains that feel too close. But the beauty comes with rules. Outside the settlement, polar bear danger is real. You do not simply wander into the wilderness unprepared. People are expected to take precautions when leaving town, because here, the wilderness begins almost immediately. There is no gentle border between human life and Arctic danger. The town is the island of safety. Everything beyond it is the unknown. And Longyearbyen has another unsettling reputation. It is often said that people are not buried there in the normal way anymore, because the permafrost can prevent bodies from decomposing properly. Even death feels altered by the environment. That is what makes this place so strange. The cold does not just shape how people live, it shapes how people think about life itself. Would you stay in a town where darkness lasts for months, where the wilderness begins at the edge of the street, where the environment is so extreme that even death does not behave normally? Longyearbyen is isolated, but it is still connected compared to our next location. Because some islands are not just far away, they are so small, so remote, and so difficult to reach that the entire community feels like it exists outside the normal world. Welcome to Pitcairn Island, a tiny speck of land in the South Pacific, one of the most remote inhabited islands on Earth. There is no airport, no easy ferry, no casual arrival. To reach Pitcairn, you first have to get to another remote island, then take a long sea journey across open water. And when you finally arrive, there is no normal harbor where a big ship simply docks. The island is rugged. The landing can be difficult. The ocean decides whether access is safe. Only a small number of people live here, so small that the entire island can feel less like a town and more like one extended household. That kind of isolation does something to a place. Everyone knows everyone. There is nowhere to disappear, no neighboring city to escape to, no new crowd to blend into, no simple way to leave when life becomes uncomfortable. On a map, Pitcairn looks peaceful. A tropical island, blue ocean, green cliffs, empty horizon. But imagine the psychological weight of living there. If supplies are delayed, you wait. If the sea is rough, you wait. If you want to leave, you need planning, transport, weather, and timing. The world is not just far away. It is logistically complicated. Would you stay in a place where the nearest ordinary life is not down the road but across the ocean, where the community is tiny, the escape routes are rare, and the horizon is both beautiful, weary, and suffocating? Pitcairn shows that paradise and prison can sometimes look almost identical. A place can be surrounded by blue water and still feel like a locked room, but our final location may be the strangest of all, because the isolation is not just physical, it is political, geographical, psychological, and somehow even temporal. Welcome to Little Diomede, Alaska, a tiny rocky island in the middle of the Bering Strait. Freezing winds, steep slopes, harsh seas. A small community clinging to the edge of the United States. There are no roads connecting it to the outside world. No airport where you can simply book a flight and leave. No easy escape. For much of the year, weather controls everything. The sea can be brutal, the ice can be dangerous, and the island feels suspended between continents. But that is not what makes Little Diomede so unsettling. What makes it strange is what you can see from the shore. Across the water, just a short distance away, there is another island. Big Diomede. It looks close. Close enough to stare at. Close enough to imagine reaching. Close enough to feel like it should be part of the same world. But it is not. Big Diomede belongs to Russia. Little Diomede belongs to the United States. Between them runs an international border, and also the international date line, which means the island across the water is not just another country. It is almost a day ahead. Little Diomede is sometimes called Yesterday Island. Big Diomede is sometimes called Tomorrow Island. Think about how strange that is. You can stand outside your home, look across the freezing water, and see land where the calendar has already moved on. A forbidden island, a different country, a different day, tomorrow, sitting right in front of you. But you cannot just go there. You cannot casually cross. You cannot turn that view into a visit. The future is visible, but unreachable. That is what makes Little Diomede such a perfect ending to this journey. Tristan da Cunha is trapped by ocean. Rinconada is trapped by altitude and poverty. Supai is trapped by canyon walls. Ittoqqortoormiit is trapped by ice and Arctic danger. Pitcairn is trapped by distance and scale, but Little Diomede is trapped by something harder to describe. It is trapped between worlds, between America and Russia, between yesterday and tomorrow, between land that is close enough to see and too far away to touch. Would you stay in a place where the future is always visible from your window, where tomorrow sits across the water, but you are not allowed to reach it? Where isolation is not just about distance, but about borders, time, and the strange rules humans draw across the earth. This is the reality of extreme isolation. We like to think geography no longer controls us. We have planes, satellites, internet, ships, phones, maps. We tell ourselves that nowhere is truly cut off anymore. But that is not true. There are still places where the Earth makes the rules, where weather decides who leaves, where distance decides who gets help, where ice decides when supplies arrive, where mountains decide how much oxygen your body gets, where canyon walls decide how fast you can escape. In these places, danger is not always loud. It is not always a collapsing house, or a deadly road, or a storm caught on camera. Sometimes the danger is quieter. The danger is needing help and knowing help is far away. The danger is looking at the horizon and realizing there is no road behind it. The danger is understanding that if something goes wrong, you may not leave when you want to. To outsiders, these places can look like prisons. Ocean prisons, ice prisons, mountain prisons, canyon prisons. But to the people who live there, they are not just traps. They are homes. They are histories. They are families. They are the places people were born, the places they work, the places they understand, and the places they choose to endure. For outsiders, the question is simple. Why would anyone stay? But after seeing these places, maybe the real question is different. Not why would you stay, but how would you ever leave?